Welcome to That's Just Good Teaching with me, Deanna Smith, where I share practical, culture responsive teaching tips that are actually just good teaching. Today, we are going to be jumping into a controversial hot button topic, which is politics. And if you have followed me for a while, you know that I am not afraid of having the tough conversations and keeping it real with you all. So we are going to be answering the question, is teaching political? It's so important that we have this discussion and not shy away from this. I know maybe we're socialized to think that politics is something that we're not supposed to talk about, but one of my favorite quotes is that even if you don't do politics, politics is going to do you regardless. And so I think as teachers, because our jobs are incredibly political, it's so important that we have this discussion and really open up a dialogue. And so that's what I'm hoping to do with you today. So I like to give you that warning and get some water, get a cup of tea, it might get a little bit spicy, but we are jumping into the tough topics today and not shying away from it. So I can't wait to have this discussion with you. Let's chat. Is teaching political? All right, y'all. So I think the first elephant in the room that we have to address is that teaching is in fact political. And I think that this is something that maybe aspirationally people would like to see politics not have anything to do with teaching. But let me tell you why I believe that teaching is inherently political. And again, this is a discussion, even though this is a video, this is a discussion. So I would love to hear, your comments, send me a DM. I talked to a lot of you all on Instagram already. So let's keep the conversation going in the comments below. But teaching is political. And let me give you a couple examples as to why. Number one, most schools, are actually funded from the tax that is pulled from the people living in the community. So on the ballot are tax increases, bonds, levies, tax decreases. Each candidate is allocating money to or taking money away from education. So teaching is political in a very monetary sense, in that the people that you are voting for are responsible for if your school is funded and how your school is funded or not. So that is one major way that teaching is political, because you're voting for the people who are making decisions about how much money your school has and how many resources your school has financially. So that's number one. And that used to, you used to be able to say maybe for a private school, that wasn't the case. But now with school choice, which is basically where private charter schools are able to access more public funds, that's the case for all types of schools now. So teaching is political, number one, because literally that's where the money comes from. So I don't really understand where the teaching is a political argument even starts, because that's where all the funding is coming from. So there's that. So when you go to vote and when you are an active member in the policies in your community, or the people that are around you are voting, your friends and family, they're voting for decisions that impact your salary, the resources that you have, how much money you have, what curriculum you have, all of those things. So that's the first major way that teaching is political. And then also, a lot of communities, they have elected officials that are in charge, whether it is school board members, whether it's people working for the Department of Education. Again, you're literally voting for those people. So that's a very political choice. And it's so important to be mindful of who is up for election for your school board. Something that I find a little concerning is one, a lot of teachers, and this is no fault of their own, it's because we're very overwhelmed. A lot of teachers don't know who is on the school board, what their terms are, what their political affiliations are. So that is one thing that I think is really important to tap into and be aware of. The other piece is that a lot of people on the school board were never teachers. They weren't. I'm sorry to tell you. In some places, it's actually, you literally cannot be on the school board and be an active teacher. And then in other places, the school board people, they have never been teachers. I don't know how else to say it. It's very interesting. Even where I am in LA, there's a lot of people that make $1 and billion, because Los Angeles is the second biggest district in the US. $1 billion decisions have never taught a child. And I really encourage you to look into who is on your school board, because there's a decent chance, unfortunately, that you have some people that don't know anything about education. So do what you will with that information. I don't know, just be active and pay attention and tap in, because that's really important. I'm laughing because it's so crazy, but it's bad. It's bad how many people make decisions. And it's interesting because in teaching, a lot of people think because they were a student or they're a product of the education system, they understand the education system. And whenever I hear that argument, I always equate it to being a doctor. Like, I have been sick before. I've been a patient. I've been hospitalized. I've had surgery. I'm not a doctor. I'm not qualified. Well, I am, but I'm not qualified, not a medical doctor, not qualified to make medical decisions, right? Like, for other people. Do you see what I'm saying? So that is another just thing that I want you all to be aware of. That's number two. So number one is that teaching is political because of the monetary decisions that are made about how our schools are funded, who is getting the funding, all the things. And then also the school board and the elected officials that are making decisions about everything. I mean, down to the start time and end time, the calendar, your school calendar, when somebody is being placed as a superintendent, when someone is removed from being a superintendent, the curriculum, all of those decisions are being made a lot of times by elected people. And so it's really important to tap in and know who those people are and know just what they value, and recognize that, again, a lot of these people, number one, it's mostly men. Which riddle me that, because teaching is 80% women, more than 80% women, but then the school boards are mostly men. You see what I'm saying? You see where I'm going with this? And then on top of that, people that haven't been teaching. So really important that you stay on top of that. I want to share another example. The third, teaching is political because teaching does not exist in a vacuum. And we're teaching in the cultural context of a very vehement kind of reframing of justice in a post 2020 world. We had a lot of momentum post 2020 and everybody was ready to have the conversation. And then this anti-CRT wave has really undone most of the positive work that has done, and to me, set us back even further than we were before 2020. So the third reason why teaching is political is because you teach within the context of all of this going on. So there are several candidates for local positions, local office, mayor, governor, etc., that have really taken on this anti-CRT approach and use that as part of their platform. And that directly relates to education, because there is a movement, whether it's the Moms for Liberty, these parents' rights groups, all of these groups that are pushing back against, again, any progress that had been made, and that are really trying to control what happens inside the classroom. A lot of this is grassroots activism from people that, don't want LGBTQ teachers in the classroom, that they don't want Black teachers in the classroom, that they don't want kids learning about history. There's no other, I cannot sugarcoat it in any other way. They literally do not want children to know the truth, because it's not like a biased thing where opinions are being shared. It's literally the whitewashing of history and removing truth through strategic wordplay in our textbooks. This is happening with major textbook companies, and because they have to market to their larger markets, such as Texas and Florida, where there are a lot of people who are anti-CRT, which, to pause, these people do not really know what CRT is. If you don't know what CRT is, I would highly recommend looking it up, because it makes a lot of sense. And it's not being taught in schools, but it actually should be, is my official opinion on the matter, but it's neither here nor there. Because these companies are marketing to these large markets, they are held hostage to these ideas that are not only damaging and leaving out part of the story, but are actually harmful to students, especially harmful to Black and brown students. And so that's a huge reason why teaching is political, because we're teaching in this political climate. I have seen LGBT teachers pushed out of the classroom. Like I said, I live in California, fortunately, so I haven't had any adverse experiences until recently. Actually, in post 2020, LAUSD took funds that had previously been allocated to policing and said that they were going to use it to directly support Black students. This is in LA. A group in Virginia sued LAUSD for this fund and said that it's racist to have funds specifically targeted to help Black students. So the funds are pretty much, they're having to re-strategize. So all this to say, y'all, teaching is political because we are in a time right now where there is really a war on information. There is a war on truth telling, social studies, and just doing what's best for your students, and a war against understanding the reality of being a Black and brown person in this country means that we need specific interventions and support for our Black and brown students. People don't want to do that. I mean, like, I don't know how else to say it. It's a very scary time. And so the idea that teaching is not political when you have parents mad that kids are learning about a person because they are gay, right? Like you can't even teach about somebody, not that you're teaching that it's okay to be gay, which it is, but you can't even teach about a person that was gay. I've seen figures like Banyar Rustin or Marsha P. Johnson removed from curriculum just for existing as non-cishet people. Do you understand what I'm saying? Schools are moving away from teaching Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. in his actual works, and yet we have the day off. Do you see what I'm saying? So to say that teaching is not political, it's just delusional in that way because there's so much going on. So I say all this to say those are the three main reasons, but there's plenty more reasons. And again, I would love to hear your perspective and share in the comments below, but this is really the world that we're living in. So all that to say, teaching is political and inherently political because even the questions of funding of where the schools are, which schools get funding, which curriculum is chosen, what days you get off, all of those things are political because it's someone's interest over someone else's interest, right? If the school's funding is tied to the neighborhood that it's in, a low-income neighborhood is going to have less funding for the school. That's just economics. So I think it's so critical that we recognize that teaching is inherently political, and every choice that we make as teachers, even down to our scope and sequence, what we choose to prioritize, the subjects that we choose to teach. Another example is some states had said that AP Black History was banned. You weren't allowed to teach AP, even though this is an AP College Board credentialed class. I think it was Florida that said that they weren't going to allow it to be taught. That's political, right? We're clear on that's political. So teaching is political. That's the part one of my thesis. And the second part is you cannot love your children and vote for policies that negatively impact them. And I want to be really clear about that. So when you, as a teacher, your vote is, your business. I'm not saying that you have to, where you shouldn't, have a big old flag in your classroom saying who you're voting for, but your voting habits have to align with your values. And so when you are voting, and I'm not just talking about the presidential election, obviously that's a big one, but I'm not just talking about president, but for everything that you're voting for, that is you indicating where your values align. And if you vote for policies that are harmful for your students, you cannot also subscribe to the idea of loving your students and caring about them because you're voting for things that would harm them, right? So I just like to call people into that conversation because I think sometimes we get so divorced from the reality of our political decision making and the day-to-day on the lines experience that we have with our students. And so just understanding that the things that you vote for have a tangible impact on the people around you, including yourself. But those two things should be aligned to each other and, do with that information what you will. So I just like to call that out because I think that we mistakenly think that we can somehow divorce our political ideologies from who we are in the classroom. That's just not the case. You teach from yourself, right? You are the independent variable, right? You are bringing you to the classroom, so you are bringing those values. And it's always interesting to me when I have teachers that, for example, vote for very racist policies, but, have a lot of Black and brown students, because I think that they think that we can't tell. And that's just not the case, unfortunately. Again, I regret to inform you, it is very obvious, because those are your beliefs, and your beliefs come out through your actions. So it's really important. I just like to name that, because I think that we try to sanitize the classroom as this utopia space that exists without context, and that you can somehow take off your skin of who you are and then come into the classroom. And that's just not the case. So, and I'd love to talk to you all more about this, so feel free. And I know this is getting a little long, so I'm gonna wrap this up, but I would be remiss if I did not take a moment to kind of unpack some of this with you, because I think teachers are such a powerful voting bloc. There's millions of us, but teachers, you don't really see us advocating like that in the way. I mean, I see nurses or firefighters or certainly police officers, they're very vocal about what they want, what policies they want. You don't see that with teachers. And I would love to see more of that. I would love to see more politically active teachers. I would love to see teachers on the ground, knocking on doors, advocating for things, and recognizing that our lives are so political. All of our lives are political. Remember, whether or not you do politics is going to do you regardless. But teachers, especially because of our position, we are at the front lines of so many of these things. And so I just encourage you to recognize your power, to be an advocate, to get out there, and to be unapologetic about being political. I hate this shame or this secrecy that we feel of oh, well, I try to stay neutral. That's not neutrality. There's another great quote, which is that neutrality is actually the side of the oppressor, but we'll get into that deeper another time, perhaps. But, faking neutrality, I don't think serves anyone, because your behaviors are clear either way. Do you know what I'm saying? So, it's not unclear where you lie based on your behaviors. And so I just invite you to kind of marinate on that, I guess, and think about that. And hopefully you have your voter guide, go through it with a fine-tooth comb, think about how it impacts education. There are some really scary things in Project 2025 about education. I haven't seen either, obviously y'all know who I'm voting for, but I haven't seen either candidate to my liking address education as much as I would like. But I do know what I don't want, right? So I think that it's really important to tap in, look at the local stuff as well, though, too. It's not just about the presidential election. Look at your mayors, look at your governors, look at your school board members. What are they going to be enacting? Because it's so disheartening how little we are involved in politics when it impacts us so directly. So anyway, y'all, this was kind of a babble video, but I wanted to share it with you all because it's important. And I think we have to be okay with having these uncomfortable conversations. And if you disagree with me, that's fine. You can leave a comment. I welcome discourse. So please leave a comment in chat. Let me know how you're navigating this very political season. And I just love taking time to chat with you all about this because it's so important. But yes, that is just a little bit of That's Just Good Teaching. Don't worry, our next video, we will be back to all the teaching tips that y'all really come here for. But we had to get that in there too. So remember to, get out there and get active, and make sure you join me on all the other social media platforms. If you want teacher tips, there is a link in the description box to join my weekly newsletter, which always has teacher tips, resources, all the things every Monday. So I will hopefully see you over there in that community. Follow me on Instagram, all the things. But it's so great to see you. And yeah, that's just good teaching.